Hey, what's up guys, Adam here, and in this video, we are going to be talking about Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. So for those of you that haven't seen one of my earlier videos, which was my top 2 financial books that completely changed my life, I actually mentioned Robert Kiyosaki's name in reference to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is one of the top best-selling books when it comes to learning about financial freedom and how to handle money. Now, this is kind of like a 2.0 of that version, and it's called the cash flow quadrant. And today I'm going to be talking about the actual principle of the cash flow quadrant and how it works. So the premise of the actual cash flow quadrant is to showcase how and where people make their money. And it does this by splitting each area into 4 different quadrants, and they are labeled E, S, B, and I. So let's start with the E quarter of the quadrant. Now, E stands for employee, and this covers everything from teachers to police officers to engineers to mechanics to retail clerks, any field where you are employed by an employer and therefore become an employee of that company or organization. So the vast majority of the population actually reside in this first quarter as an employee, mainly because that is what society sets up to do. It sets up to learn a skill so we can then join the workforce and become a productive member of society. It's pretty much a trait that we've carried over from the industrial age into the information age. So society is best set up for people to be an employee, and therefore you go to school, you go to college, you go to university to train in a certain area to become a productive employee. And in this category, usually your hours, your salary, how you work and where you work is determined by an employer. So moving down the left-hand side of the quadrant, we reach the S quarter. Now the S stands for small business or self-employed, or if in the UK, it could stand for sole trader. Now, originally Robert claimed that this category would be if you're running a business with 500 employees or less. I think he's actually walked this back now to about 50 employees, mainly because we're living in the internet age and there's so many services now that can be systemized and digitalized. So if your company is 50 employees or smaller, then it's actually classed as a small business in his eyes. So this course would actually cover a lot of non-chain or non-franchise businesses, or businesses that are very small or very localized. It will also cover a lot of startup businesses. It would also cover tradespeople like decorators, electricians, plumbers. It could also cover people that are lawyers or doctors and own their own practice. Now, in most cases, the people that operate these kinds of businesses tend to be the engine behind the overall business. So if they stop working, then the actual business itself effectively comes to a stop. Okay, so moving on now to the right hand side of the quadrant, we're going to get to the B quarter. Now B stands for big businesses, companies that have over 500 employees, or for the case of the internet age, over 50 employees. Now these types of businesses tend to be fairly franchised or be part of a chain. Now your big name companies like Apple, Microsoft, McDonald's, Burger King, Google will all reside in this quarter because they have a system in place that will keep generating them a revenue without the owners of those particular businesses having to be present or on site to watch the work being carried out. So moving down the right hand side of the quadrant into the I quarter. Now the I quarter stands for investor, and someone who usually resides in this quarter tends to receive the majority of their income from investments. So this quarter tends to include those with a large stock portfolio in which they draw their income down from, whether it be full of high performing stocks or dividend paying stocks. It also includes those that like to invest in the property market, and it also includes those that invest in other people's businesses without actually owning a piece of that business, but they can actually get a rate of return from actually investing their money into certain different businesses. Now this quarter tends to include the likes of George Soros and Warren Buffett, you know, people that have been investing for many years and have a portfolio that's so big now that they can simply draw all of their income simply from a stocks portfolio. Now, throughout the cash flow quadrant book, Robert actually makes quite a few comparisons between the left-hand side of the quadrant and the right-hand side of the quadrant. Now, to be honest, it is a lot easier to reside in the left-hand side of the quadrant, mainly because, as I said before at the start of this video, society is definitely set up more to gear a lot of people towards being a productive employee, or maybe to start their own small business. And there's also a lot less risk on the left-hand side of the quadrant as well. However, though, you have a lot less control on the left-hand side of the quadrant. For example, you don't really have the option to have so much free time. For example, most employee-based jobs tend to be of the 9 to 5 variant, 5 days a week. So most of your time in the week is spent up by working. And aside to that point as well, you don't really have much room when it comes to negotiation for your salary, unless of course you get a promotion or you choose a different field where the income potential is a lot greater. But even in that case though, you'll tend to be capped out with how much income you can get in one specific field when you're working for somebody else. You're also not really able to shield your income from heavy tax when you're on the left-hand side of the quadrant. For example, you can't write off the fuel that you use to get to work as a tax write-off, unfortunately, whereas that is something you can actually do when you are a business owner. Now that means that those on the left-hand side of the quadrant tend to pay a lot more tax given their actual income versus those on the right-hand side of the quadrant. Now it takes a lot of work to move from the left-hand side of the quadrant to the right-hand side of the quadrant. Now, when I say a lot of work, I don't actually mean physical work. It takes a lot of intellectual work and a lot of research to figure out how you're going to move yourself from one side of the quadrant to the other. And the biggest jump that tends to take place is from the S quarter over to the B quarter. So the reason the jump between the S quarter to the B quarter is so major is because when people want to start up a business for the first time, they want to be able to literally try to play an entire orchestra and be every instrument in between. So they want to do the marketing, they want to do the social media, they want to do the HR, they want to do the day-to-day running. And what that basically means is it doesn't leave them any free time to actually focus on the core focus of the business because they're trying to do so many day-to-day tasks. Now, the most successful businesses actually have a team in place that are specialized in these particular areas that can move the business forward. But a lot of people tend to be quite attached to their business. They want to, they want to keep it quite shielded and control everything. And that leaves them then stuck in the S quarter because they're not able to get the traction and the groundwork because they haven't got a strong team behind them that can move them over into the B quarter. Now, of course, the way I'm explaining it makes it sound like it's a lot easier said than done, and it really is a lot more difficult than this. Of course, I'm paraphrasing a lot of the material from the book. So if you go ahead and read the book, it'll go into a lot more detail, but it definitely requires you to have a large team in order to push you from the S quarter to the B quarter. And even trying to generate and even pay that team requires that S business to be good in the first instance. So it needs to be generating a lot of growth and a lot of capital to actually pay for that great team to move you over into the B quarter. So it's definitely a very difficult jump to make. And Robert himself says trying to get into that B quarter, B is the most difficult quarter that there is on the entire quadrant. So it is a hard job. It is definitely hard, but when you get into that B quarter, it is almost endless amounts of gains that you can potentially make within that B quarter. That is where the big bucks are really made. So personally, I of course reside on the left-hand side of the quadrant. I am a full-time multimedia developer, so that makes me an employee. So I reside in the E quarter, and I also run my own freelance videography business that will put me in the S quarter as well. And I'm slowly trying to dip my toe into the right-hand side of the quadrant, into the investor quarter, by slowly building up my stocks portfolio. I'm also looking to get into property investment, with the end goal being to live off of my investments as a source of income, and that will then push me all the way over into the right-hand side of the quadrant. So the Cashflow Quadrant is a fantastic book for reading, and the concept is absolutely phenomenal. It makes you do a lot of thinking. Once again, just like Rich Dad Poor Dad, it really got my mind thinking. So I'll leave that in the description down below so you can take a look at that book. So now guys, that's been the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give me a big thumbs up down below. If you want to see more content like this, such as personal finance, investing, business, even videography, this is the channel for it. So be sure to hit the subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell so you know when we upload videos to the channel. Anyway guys, it's been Adam here. Thank you for watching. Take care, and of course, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.